All right. Welcome back to another episode of Light Skin Pod, number 58. Climbing till we hit 60 and road to 100. But we're here with a special guest. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Joel Kilgour. I work with CHUM.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on with us, Joe.
You're welcome.
Like always, start us off with tell us about Baby Joel.
Baby Joel.
Yeah,
okay.
Going back to the beginning.
Going back to the beginning. Well, my mom's from Duluth.
Okay.
So fourth generation Hillsider on that side. But I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, so quite a bit further north. My dad's Canadian. And we were there for a while and then came back when I was young. So before I started school, settled back in Duluth and was raised up in the Heights. And yeah, that's Baby Joel. My mom's one of 12 kids.
Oh, dang.
So it was a big family.
Yeah, that's wild.
And yeah, love Duluth.
Yeah.
So all 12 siblings of your mom's side grew up in Duluth?
Yeah, one of them died as a child, but yeah, the rest of them grew up here, and yeah, we've scattered a little bit. The diaspora has spread to Minneapolis, and we got a few out in Seattle, but we all come back here to gather and celebrate. It's a pretty close-knit family.
Yeah. Did you have a big family on your dad's side as well, or
smaller family? And we saw them a couple times a year usually in Southern Ontario. Not quite as tight knit, but yeah.
I get that. My mom's side, gosh, that's weird. Interesting to think about it. I never think about it. My mom's side, they seem like they're close, but they ain't. Like don't know nobody like each other, but you would never know. When they talk about each other, you feel like, oh yeah, this is my cousin. They here, or I see them last week. You don't even like this lady, but my dad's side, crazy close.
Yeah,
I mean everybody tight with each other all the time. They hate moving 20 minutes away from each other. They're that kind of close family. Yeah. So that's interesting. So how many siblings do you have?
I have two younger sisters.
Two younger. All right. So. Not that you know what it was coming back to Duluth, but how was it like growing up for you here in Duluth anyway?
Good. I mean, the family was close and loving, and yeah, I lived in town, but in the woods, kind of behind St. Scholastica on Rice Lake Road, and it had free reign of that. So that was like half of my childhood, and the other half was on Fifth Avenue in my grandma's house and the sports court, and with all these dozens of cousins. And so, yeah, it was a pretty good experience. I mean, growing up as a child of the 80s in Duluth, I've been reflecting on that a lot with some of the public conversation about downtown Duluth. Yeah. And it's like, we're doing great compared to the 80s. I mean, that was a pretty rough time economically, and I know my parents had to weather some of that, but never felt like, we definitely grew up working poor, but never felt like we did without, and part of that's having that close family that's there to catch you when you need it.
Yeah. It's wild because, you hear people say, oh, the world is getting worse. I don't know what I think it's doing. I think because of access to information and stuff like that, it seems like it, because it probably used to take a while to hear that something bad happened 3 states ago. Right. Now you hear the moment it happens, and most of the news is all negative anyway. Right. But I don't know. I feel like, we can all drink from the same water fountains right now, so it's kind of not as crazy as it was.
No, yeah, I think just generally speaking, the world is improving. But like you say, access to the news. I mean, if something bad happens in South Carolina, you hear about it, and then somehow you feel it also affects you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's so far. That's 1,000 miles away. Yeah. It has nothing to do with us. Some things do, but whatever. So what schools did you go to growing up?
I closed a lot of grade schools. I was supposed to start at Julius Barnes, and then they closed that the year before I started kindergarten, and then I went to Kenwood for kindergarten, and then they closed that. Okay. Then I went to Chester Park. Okay. And then I went to Marshall.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
Or
what
middle
is it
school,
about
high
you
school.
that ruined all these schools?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. I was a really nice kid. I didn't cause any trouble. When I was but by the time I was in high school, I was a bit of a troublemaker. But
Gosh, I was a demon too. I don't know why I was so bad in high school, but I was. But my grades were good, so I had that on my side. As you got through high school, did you ever think, oh, I want to move away for some time, or did you always kind of want to stay in the area?
I thought I was going to move away. I actually set up, so I never went to college after. I did a PSEO in high school, so I got some experience and was like, this isn't for me, at least not right now. So I set up a series of internships at different organizations around the country, and my first one was here at Loaves Fishes.
Oh,
so
cool.
I was just going to spend a few months there, and then I stayed for 25 years.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
wild.
how it worked out.
Yep.
And I tried to move away a few times. I lived on a farm in Southern Ontario That's where my dad's from. That's how I'm in Southern Minnesota. For a while, I lived in Baltimore for a while.
Baltimore?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm from the East. I'm from Jersey.
Ori?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Baltimore and Towson. And
That was
love
a very different experience. It's
the East
hard.
Coast different.
Yeah, and the
East Coast
poverty.
tough.
I mean, I was in probably one of the most rundown parts of Baltimore. I mean, with the it was rough. I mean, whole buildings that were missing electricity and roofs were missing, and kids really had the choice of joining a gang or joining the military, and and I was living with a community of religious do-gooders that had taken over an old Catholic cemetery there, and so we were probably the only white people in the neighborhood, and it was it was a real eye-opener. I mean, for as bad as poverty is here, to see what just generations of people that have been experiencing in what used to be a middle-class neighborhood and then was deliberately destroyed by the powers there in the city. Didn't last there very long because they didn't have any lakes or nice parks.
At all.
Spent a little time in Gothenburg, Sweden, and then I just came back because this is home and I miss the lake.
For sure. So what was your initial internship at Loaves Fishes where you started?
We're very informal there, so they're just like, come and live here and check it out for 3 months. So again, real eye opener for an 18-year-old. I mean, I think I grew up in a family that cared a lot about the community and valued volunteerism and doing good in the world, and and we had our own experiences as a family with people who were struggling and out on the street for some time. So that wasn't new to me, but really diving into it 24/7 was hard. And Loaves Fishes is an interesting place, and that it's not really a nonprofit. It's just a group of do-gooders. My best way after years of being there, the best way I found to describe it is if a homeless shelter and a hippie commune had a baby. And then they also do church sometimes. So I mean, you're just immersed. I mean, we live there at the house and share our lives with people, and so it was a lot, and it was a quick, it was steep learning curve, I would say, that I had to, because I came into it as an idealist and a young activist, and was pretty sure I was right about everything, and then through that develop a much deeper understanding of how to actually make change, and that people aren't props. You know, like this is real lived experience of poverty, and how do I learn? You know, as somebody who is aspiring to be an organizer, how do I learn to not be in front of the camera, but put other people there and let them tell their stories and be that helper in the background? That wasn't easy because at 18 you're very different kind of person. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe you can explain to everybody what Loaves Fishes is.
Yeah, so Loaves Fishes is part of an international movement called the Catholic Worker that started in the 1930s by a Catholic convert and a lay French Catholic guy who moved to Duluth and was kind of an itinerant, or not to Duluth, I'm sorry, to New York.
Ontario, New York, it's the same.
My late 40s Swiss cheese brain. And they were looking for a way during the height of the Depression to live out Catholic social teaching in a meaningful way, and started this newspaper that was called The Catholic Worker, which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on The Daily Worker, which was a big communist rag at that time. Tried to present a different perspective, social justice perspective from that Catholic side, and then they just started buying up and renting properties and moving in and building community and welcoming people to share their home with them and food. And so the movement's just grown over time. There are about 200 communities like ours around the world. And they're all autonomous. The founders were anarchist Catholics. So there's really no centralized structure. We just have some shared values of nonviolence and service, and Catholics and non-Catholics are welcome to join those communities. And Loaves Fishes was started in 1989 by the late Steve O'Neill and Angie Miller. They went to school here, studied social work, and then went to Washington, D.C. to be part of a movement out there called the Community for Creative Nonviolence, which was doing a lot of similar work. It wasn't a Catholic worker, but they actually took over a Votech school and turned it into what's, I think, still the largest homeless shelter in the country.
Oh, no.
And
still in D.C. or?
In D.C., yeah.
Okay.
And so they decided that wasn't a place to raise a family, though.
Yeah,
so once they started growing one, they
dirty.
moved here and started Loaves and Fishes in that tradition of the Catholic worker, and it's been here since. There's 4 houses now, just a rotating cast of volunteers who come and dedicate their life to the work, and we take in people off the streets who need a place to go. They're doing some foster care there now, and big gardens, and they got a free bicycle shop in the basement. So kind of whatever,
that's cool.
Whatever good thing the community needs that people have passion for, they just do.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't know all that about Loaves and Fishes. I know we've done some work with it before and just small stuff, but yeah, that's good. Just history on them, because I had no idea about a lot of that.
Yeah.
So, what made you leave the organization?
Like I said, it's 24/7 there. So, I mean, I put in my time. I was there for, about 30 years of my life, but I had some years that I stepped away and tried other things, but so about 25 cumulatively. And I don't, it was good work, but it was time to branch out and
to breathe.
Be able to have a place where I didn't have people knocking on my door in the middle of the night because they needed something, and also, it's a beautiful model there, but it's limited in the number of people that I can help, and so I'm at that stage now in the work that I'm doing that I'm thinking about bigger systemic change, and so I learned a lot from that experience, the importance of meeting people where they're at, we talk. Housing is the lack of housing is that's the biggest cause of homelessness, but there's other needs that people have, and a big one is community. A lot of people just lose contact with their family, with their friends, and so rebuilding that's a key part of people's healing. So I've taken that and I'm trying to apply that now on a bigger scale.
After Loaves and Fishes, did you transition right into CHUM, or did you have something in the middle of there?
I was doing both for a while. So I was working part-time at CHUM, helping run the warming center.
Yep.
That was a partnership between Loaves and Fishes and CHUM and the county and city. And then a few years ago, we started organizing all of our homeless and service and housing organizations under this umbrella that we're calling Stepping On Up, to try to tackle the issue of increased numbers of people on the street, totally unsheltered. How do we do this together? Because none of us have the resources alone, and there hasn't been the leadership at the city or county level to pull that together. So it's really took the nonprofits coming together. So that's kind of created a role for myself, and been doing that. We launched that campaign in 2023, and I've been full-time for a couple years. So.
How is it going from your perspective so far?
I was feeling really positive up until recently, and we are definitely seeing some setbacks now, huge setbacks on the federal level and the state level with our budgets that we're, I think the state's trying to do the best that they can. The federal government is now very hostile to our work, and resources are shifting really quickly away from us, and that's going to create new problems. So I think on a local level, we've done some incredible work, and we were making progress, and now really bracing for the impacts of those cuts. We're going to have to get even more creative and rally even more local support to even maintain the services that we have now.
Yeah, I get that. Running a nonprofit is, you feel a lot of it, and the work that you do is very important. So it sucks when, especially people who have the resources to give, don't feel that same importance until it's on their doorstep. And then it's like, oh, where's everybody at? We've been here. We've been trying to do this work and show you, like, here's why it's important. And also, we're helping people. You know, it ain't like we just, I don't know, building origami or, you know, something like that. We're working with actual lives. And the impact of resources impacts not only this person, but their kids and their generations to follow and things like that. So it's tough. And I know we've had to get real creative. There's been a couple scares, even in our organization, of just funding us. You know you'll get it, but then you get a call or an email of, hey, this is paused until undetermined time. You know, it's like, what the hell does that mean? So how do I fill a $50,000 gap or a $100,000 gap of money that we was counting on or that was already awarded, you know, to us that you just can't get paid out? It's crazy. So, so one of the hot topic things, or at least here in Duluth, is one of the projects that y'all working on now. You want to talk about that a little bit, and we can kind of get into it?
Sure. Yeah. I have to say, some people are presenting this as controversial. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
It's Safe Bay is a program we started in 2023 as a safe, secure parking lot for people who are living in their vehicles. So we have hundreds of people in the Duluth community experiencing homelessness, 600 households, more than that, on our priority wait list for housing because they're currently homeless. Our shelters are overwhelmed. You know, CHUM was built for 30 people, and there was a night recently we had 141 people in the shelter.
So there's a waiting list of 600 unhoused people waiting.
Households.
Wow.
Households.
And those are the higher needs households. So a lot of first-time homeless people with not a lot of barriers besides just economics, don't even register for that list because there's no housing. So that's part of the population that we're trying to serve with Safe Bay. Those people who aren't accessing homeless services. It's a mixed population of people, but we definitely see more working homeless, first-time homeless, living in their cars. They're scared to go to shelter, or they don't know about those resources, and so they're just out there on their own. And we opened in 2023 in the Damiano Center parking lot. So we have a location overnight that's staffed, secure. People can access Wi-Fi. They can take a shower, meet some of their basic needs, but then they also are able to preserve that autonomy of having their own space, their own vehicle. That just feels safer for them than congregate shelter right now. And it's been hugely successful. I mean, it's run really without incident. The first year we had some parking problems on 4th Street because during the day, if people didn't have anywhere to go, they just stayed there because that's where the resources were. But we resolved that. And we've had really high rates of success in terms of, well, like I mentioned, not only making first contact with people who hadn't been in touch with our outreach workers before, but also moving people into housing. Last year we had 23 of our households at Safe Bay move into housing over a 5-month period, which is an astounding number given our housing crisis here. That just doesn't happen in shelter. So it's working to have this model of meeting people where they're at. And we've been getting calls from all over the Midwest. I mean, we were one of the first communities in the Midwest to adopt a safe parking program like this. And now several other cities are opening up similar programs based on Safe Bay. So it's been hugely successful. Kind of running it based, with some foundation money that we were able to get at the startup of Stepping On Up, and hoping that now that we've proven its worth, that the state's going to see the value in it and fund it like it does our other shelters.
So for people who don't know, talk about what some of the benefits of this are, and just what are some of the services that y'all offer to people that's involved in this program. Yeah.
So we will welcome anybody who's experiencing homelessness, whether it's long-term or they're temporarily displaced. We have had people come into the program who are showing up in Duluth for school, and they haven't been able to secure housing or showing up for a job, and they didn't realize how tight the market was and needed a place to stay for a while. And we've had people show up who've been on the streets for years at a time. So anyone can come on the nights that we're open. We're only open during the warmer months. In the winter, we just redirect people to the warming center because winters in Duluth are not a safe place to be in your car. But people show up, they'll be greeted by staff, they'll have access to a shower. Like I said, the parking lot is secured by staff and cameras, so nobody can come in and harass people. That's one of the biggest issues people face in their cars. It's a very vulnerable place to be. I mean, even though it provides some privacy for yourself and for your belongings, anyone could knock on your door, and often they do. And in Duluth, it's legal to sleep in your car if you're legally parked, but that officers are routinely conducting welfare checks, and if that's 2 a.m. and you have to work tomorrow, that's rough. So it's a place you can actually get a safe night's sleep without having to worry about that. And then we also have a dedicated outreach worker and now a peer support specialist that work with people one-on-one to whatever their goals are. I mean, housing is usually top of the list for everyone, but connecting them with other resources as well.
One thing that blew me away, so Melissa, who you work with up at Vineyard, she had said, we'll come up and take a tour. And so I did. I drove up, and I wasn't expecting everything that you guys have to offer. I mean, it's actually incredible. First of all, the parking lot is massive. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that and fencing or whatever, some of the issues that are coming up. But then to walk into the building, and you've got the food shelf, and all of it's numbered, and they've got frozen foods, meats, dry products, kids clothing. And then, remember when Damiano Center, or no, who came on for First Street? Katie Haig.
Oh, yeah.
Union Gospel.
Union Gospel, yep. And she had talked about sort of a triage center. And you guys are kind of doing that on a smaller scale. So I was actually really impressed with everything. I think so many people hear, it's just overnight parking. But it's actually so much more than that.
Yeah.
What is some of the pushback you're getting from people?
Yeah, well, okay. Before I answer that, let me set this up by saying this is being presented as more controversial than it actually is.
For sure.
I mean, Vineyard is a longtime Kenwood neighbor, and they invited the program into the neighborhood. And we had put out a call because the CHUM shelter is temporarily moving into Damiano. And so there's just not enough space there. And frankly, as grateful as we are to Damiano for hosting the program, it's a busy corner for people to try to sleep at night. So we know that there were, especially families with younger kids, that weren't even showing up for the program because it just didn't, even though it was staffed, it didn't feel like the place they could get a safe night's sleep. So we were looking for a quieter location and, to find a place that would let us use their space for free, had a shower indoors, and a quiet parking lot. Not a lot of those, and Vineyard stepped up and at the last minute offered to host us. Yeah. So the process went really quickly from there to applying for a permit with the city. We had actually worked with city planning a few years ago to develop a permitting process for outdoor living sites, and that was initially conceived as like safe places people could set up tents. And there was some discussion at that time about whether it would include things like a safe parking program, and we decided that it probably should, because it's just good to have standards to make sure that people are safe. So we're all good with that process, but it did happen very quickly. We hosted a neighborhood meeting that went fairly well. Our police and fire chief were there to answer questions. And a lot of neighbors have been really supportive. In fact, we have neighbors that have been volunteering on a regular basis with the program. There has been pushback from other neighbors. Right now, there's been an appeal filed. So the City Planning Commission, after hearing all the evidence, voted unanimously to grant this permit. There was an appeal filed by some neighbors. And the way city law is currently written, a program has just stayed, the permit has stayed pending that appeal, so we had to shut down. We don't know, even the appellants aren't actually named in the appeal, so we're not sure who they are, and we'll probably find out more at the hearing on Thursday. So I know there have been some misgivings by neighbors. I can't speak for them. What's in the appeal is complaints about the dense urban screening. There was about an hour of discussion about what that means at the Planning Commission meeting, and then about some public statements by CHUM that the appellants thought were contradictory. So those are the two things that are actually mentioned in the appeal, though we know that in statements to the media and other communications we've received, there's some fear about safety in the neighborhood, that people in our program are potentially putting neighbors at risk. That's not backed up by the data or by our experience. But I understand the fear of the unknown, and especially since homelessness is. So we're in that. Homelessness is such a difficult conversation to talk about because everybody wants easy answers and there aren't. It's really complicated and everybody's story is unique. What we do know is that people experiencing homelessness are much more likely to be victims of crimes, and in fact, it's one of the most victimized populations in our community. Justice Department did a study on this and found that 50% of people experiencing homelessness will experience some kind of violent crime. Compared to 2 to 3% of the general population. And for people who are long-term and chronically homeless, almost all of them have had some adverse childhood experiences, and then during their experience of homelessness will be victims of physical or sexual assault. I mean, just almost everyone. So that's the perspective I'm coming from, but I think for people not doing this work and seeing how encampments have grown because there's nowhere for people to go, and then mental health symptoms, substance use symptoms just get out of control because there's no support, there's no safety, there's nowhere for people to be. Their whole lives are lived publicly, and they're experiencing trauma on a daily basis, and it does get out of control. So if that's your vision of homelessness, that's all you're seeing, then I totally understand why it's scary. And so that's why we approached the neighborhood with some openness and making sure that we had, that city code doesn't require neighborhood meetings, but we certainly want to have that because we want to have a good relationship with the neighborhood. So I think, those are I don't think that the dense urban screening is the issue. I think it's those underlying fears. And we were only open for 9 days, so there was no way to really measure whether it was going to be safe. We had no police calls and no major incidents. But
by dense urban screening, what does that mean?
So because
I don't want to sound ignorant when I ask my next question.
I had to go back and look at the definition. So under city code, for something like this, and this is true of businesses too, if you're in a residential neighborhood, you need to provide some screening. So it could be fencing, it could be foliage, it could even be a berm, just protecting line of sight. And I think that when we were talking about this particular special use permit or interim use permit for people living in their outside, I think those the concern from city planners was the individuals who are living in that site, that we want to make sure no one's peering into their tent or into their car, and vice versa. We don't want neighbors to have to be dealing with that kind of line of sight. So we've, the planning commission's determined we've met those, the expectations of code. I mean, you really can't, there's about 250 feet from the property line to the nearest house back there, and it's largely wooded. So it's really like the spirit. I know that I gave feedback on that code when they were writing it. I know what the intent was, and I think that we, even without putting up any additional screening, I think we meet the requirements. But just to be safe, we did move some of the screening we were using at Damiano Center up there. So the one place where there's potentially some line of sight to a house, we have a 6-foot screen. But we could, and I think this is just a 1-year permit, and we're not sure where we're going to be next year. So, and there's not extra money. So I think if this ends up being our permanent home, then we might think about some other solutions there, a row of trees or even fencing. But that's what we have to offer this year, and I know some neighbors aren't happy with that, but
that's won't happen. I think, and my questions would be is not so much root issue things, because there are some things that are out of our control. What we can do, we can provide. But what other kind of wraparound services, other than like, helping with food and clothing, do y'all get to connect people to a lot of different resources like counseling or if they're struggling with chemical dependency, stuff like that?
Yeah, and we try to separate the outreach services that happen there are separate from the frontline staff who are running the program. So the frontline staff are there to greet people, do intake with people, make them feel welcome. Help, they keep the shower list. They, make sure that rules are being followed and people are being supported. And they do perimeter checks to ensure people's safety. And then outreach staff from CHUM and other organizations come on a regular basis and do those one-on-one conversations with people. For us, it's really important that people set the agenda themselves, what they know are their greatest needs and barriers, and ask for help from outreach. I mean, we always prioritize housing, but beyond that, that's a kind of one-on-one conversation that our outreach workers would have with people using the program.
And y'all got somebody that's stationed, so do they have an overnight, like a 24? Yep. Okay, so it's always somebody there.
Now that since we moved to Vineyard, we were able to expand our hours. We opened at 8 at Damiano because of other programming there, but which was not a great time, especially for families. So we're now open at 6 at Vineyard. So all hours that we're open, we have a CHUM staff person there, 2 CHUM staff people there overnight, and then in the evenings and mornings we have volunteers that work alongside one of our staff members who are trained and vetted.
Okay, well, shoot, that's good information too, because when you hear about it from other people, I heard somebody say, there's not going to be anybody there watching to see what's going on, or what if there's a lot of riffraff, who's going to be there to keep it at bay. So it's nice to know, that there are staff there, as well as y'all have, outreach workers that will have those one-on-one conversations with people. And the hope is to help them get to a place where they can be more stable. Let's use that word. It's a good word for now.
Yeah, it's a good
word. Bigger words, but it's for themselves. And I appreciate this kind of work because homelessness is something I don't fully understand. I understand how people can become homeless, but sometimes, or for a long time, I didn't get like, well, why can't they just get a job? Which everybody say, why can't they just work? Or I did it, so they should be able to stop. You can't really say that. Like, you don't know what people's been through, And I learned that so much even working with kids. Stuff that is common sense to me may not be common sense to them because of how they approach the thought, or maybe the lack of, just being educated on something or understanding, or never having access to certain resources in the first place to even know what's going on, So this is a big thing, I think, that can be helpful, that has been helpful, for a lot of people to have somewhere safe to go, whether you're sleeping in your car or in a tent. I mean, if you ain't got nowhere to lay your head, you messed up already. That's a tough thing. So, I appreciate the work y'all doing, and I definitely gonna keep following it as it progresses, and see what's going on with all this. Do y'all have any idea on how long it may take for these appeals and things to kind of get worked out? Or
we the city council scheduled an emergency hearing for this Thursday, so at 6 p.m. And I expect that will prevail. I mean, this was there was really no concerns by city staff that reviewed our application, no concerns by the planning commission, and the city council generally defers to that planning commission unless there's something really glaring. And there's nothing in the appeal that suggests that anything's happened there that actually puts the neighborhood in harm's way. So I expect we'll be able to open again. I mean, the neighbors who filed the appeal do have other options if they want to pursue it, but that would be moving into the courts and outside of the city's jurisdiction then. So as far as the city's concerned, if the city council upholds the decision of the planning commission, we'll be back open.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important too for people to hear this side of the story. Because I know I've been guilty of it. They were talking about building some apartment complex on this hill and maybe putting in another launch area. And of course, my first thing is, well, I don't want that here,
Right.
you know, and I think everybody's that way. Like, well, I don't want it in my backyard, you know, but when you hear the other side and then nobody wants to see tents out all over the place and all these encampments, you know, so anything we can do to help curb that and put them in a safe spot that gets them linked up with services, I think is important.
If there are there volunteer opportunities with this, if people want to get involved and help, how can they do that?
Yeah, if they go to the steppingonupduluth.org website, there's a link there they can follow to sign up to be a volunteer. We host volunteer orientations periodically. We're a little busy right now, so it might take a few weeks before we get back to you. But yeah, we definitely welcome volunteers. There's also a list of items that we need. So when we try to make sure that if people are following all the program rules, they're meeting regularly with outreach workers, we provide a gas card incentive so that people can help people get to school, to work, to meet their appointments. We, you know, little things that if you're not living in your vehicle, you might not think of. Those windshield screens to like keep the sun out and the light out. I mean, those are really beneficial to people to get a good night's sleep. So we have some items like that people could donate. And I think, you know, the biggest thing right now is I really hope people can approach these issues with curiosity and compassion. I mean, I have family members that have been through this for different reasons, and I know, you know, we talk about homeless as if it's a class of people. I just hate the word, right? But it's not a class of people. It's an economic condition that can happen to anyone, and it is true that people living with disabilities, living with substance use disorder, much more likely to fall into homelessness, and it's harder to get out. Homelessness can cause some of those things too. I mean, it's very complex, and every person's story is different. And it's really part of this continuum of housing need that we experience in Duluth. So if you're a renter and you're one of the 30% of renters that are paying 50% of your income for housing, like you're on that same spectrum of need. And any one of us could, you know, have an accident or an injury or an illness or lose a job and find ourselves in a really scary position all of a sudden that we didn't expect. And until we address the shortage of housing in Duluth, we're not going to fix this problem. And there's a lot of other issues like the opioid crisis that have made it more complicated. But fundamentally, it comes down to that. And if you look at, you know, this is true across the country. If you look at the greatest predictors of homelessness in a community, it's not drug use, it's not mental health issues, it's the availability of affordable housing. And if we can address that, then we can start tackling those other issues. But without it, people's conditions just spiral and get worse. And so for me, as you know, as one of the people trying to help, while I understand and appreciate the worries of neighbors that have a program that coming into their community and the word homeless is attached to it, and then that they imagine all the worst possibilities, I just ask, well, what else are we supposed to do? I mean, this is a community problem. These are, you know, people fall into homelessness are somebody's relative, they're somebody's coworker, you know, and if we start thinking about what kind of solutions we would want for the people that we love who are struggling, that's how we should be approaching this as a community. And this one is particularly frustrating because, you know, we hear a lot, well, my tax dollars shouldn't pay for this, the churches should be doing it. Okay, so now they are, now what? Now you're going to shut that down too? So like, where do we go? Because we're left with literally no options. And we had a gathering up of faith leaders from across Duluth on last Wednesday, because I think that, you know, this is reverberating across a lot of those communities. We had Orthodox and Catholic and Jewish and Protestant and evangelical leaders together saying, well, hold up now, like this church is trying to do something on private property in alignment with their essential mission. We can't, what is that going to mean for all of our other programs if somebody who doesn't like this program happening near them can shut it down with an appeal? So I think there's a lot of concern about that. And I do hope, you know, one thing after we get beyond this appeal, I think it's really, I do hope that the City Council takes a close look at how code is currently written and how that appeal process works. because from my perspective, I think if somebody is going to shut down a program like this, they have to be able to show that there's actual harm that's happening, not just that an appeal is filed. Yeah. Especially when we're talking about displacing human beings who have nowhere else to go. Yeah. So it's, lots of layers to this.
It is. It is. And no, Trevor, I appreciate your insight as well as like just the data that y'all collect on it, because there's a lot of things that people argue against ignorantly, or just purely based on emotions. And it's like, listen, I get how you feel, but that's not the truth. Like if y'all want change, then let's get down to the root issue of what needs to be changed, what things need to be put into place to help some of these things occur less, things like that. So, no, it's like you say, just to have the source, the people who work in boots on the ground is nice. So, like I said, we appreciate the work y'all doing, and anyway, we can support, we will, and we'll make sure to put that website up as
awesome.
well.
Thank you.
I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, and you guys have a fundraiser. This will air after
Oh, okay.
The fundraiser tomorrow. Are you involved with that, or is that just okay?
Wednesday.
Okay, we're gonna put out a little teaser for this, and we'll put that flyer out with it. But maybe just explain what that is.
Yeah. So after we learned that the program had to shut down and people were displaced, a few musician friends reached out and wondered how they could help. Curious thing about city code right now is that we need a permit to run a program to allow people to quietly sleep, but we do not need a permit to have a concert in the parking lot at the church. So, so we're going to do that. And mostly, we want to keep it positive. Like this isn't, I'm not angry at neighbors who file this appeal. I understand where they're coming from. But this whole process has been really harmful to individuals who use the program, and have heard some pretty awful things said about them and assumed about them, to the helpers, our frontline staff, and to the church, which really took a risk here. They've been through some things the last few years, and had a very predatory leadership that caused harm to people, and they have decided as a congregation to respond to that, not by shutting down, but by opening their doors more widely, which I think is a beautiful thing. They've joined CHUM. They want to be more transparent and more engaged as part of their healing process. And then to be hit with this now, it's like, oh man, I want to be able to support them. So it's going to be a gathering just to celebrate all the different ways that neighbors help neighbors. We got some great musicians that are going to be there. The Indian headband and Charlie Parr and Hannah Ray and Brianna Marie and so it's going to be
that's right.
That's like nice.
Yes, we do this Taste Twin Ports thing, and she was playing one night there. Very good musician.
It's great.
Yeah.
So we'll sell it. We'll pass the basket. Obviously, all of our organizations are struggling right now, so we're already scraping the bottom of the barrel, and this has been tough because there's added costs with making sure all the people who are using the program are safe and have the resources they need, the legal costs, and so. But really, it's about celebrating neighbors and just putting some good energy into the world, and so it's going to be a good celebration. Yeah. Oasis Del Norte will be there. Great food.
Eduardo the man. He's a good dude. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much. And for people listening, I hope that y'all got to learn a little bit more about this as well and take some truths from this. And like you mentioned before, is approach it with compassion, rather than just disgust or hate about something that you don't understand. So, yeah, like always.
Whoa.
Oh.
Whoa.
Go.
Oh, all right.
Go.
Okay, we're going to finish this by asking you something that we always ask everybody.
Oh, okay.
Now, don't think of it as what would you change about what you did, but if you could go back and simply say something to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, it's a tough one.
Man, okay, all right. To my younger self. take care of yourself.
It's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, you matter. And I think my especially the younger activist Joel that didn't, we all have our coping strategies, and that was mine. To get through life is like just be on all the time. We are better helpers when we are healthy, and and then we can model that to other people. I mean, that's our. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
That's perfect.
That's a great one.
That is. It's good.
Yeah.
I don't be taking care of myself too much. I'll be acting a fool. But good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for being on with us.
Happy to be here.
And like always, thanks for y'all being on with us as well. And like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next time.
Boom.
Boom.